This is a production of Cornell University.
Again, my name is Lorenzo Caponetti. I'm a farmer in central Italy. This is part of the landscape that I can look at from my place, which is not a bad landscape at all, but is somewhat challenging in a number of ways. Again, we are based in a little town that is called Tuscania, which is about 50 miles north from Rome. Tuscania is not in Tuscany today, but used to be about the same thing about 2,800 years ago. Then some type of accident happened. But anyway, again, this is where we are. This is Lake Bracciano, Lake Pico, Lake Bolsena. This is all a volcanic bridge, and we're just at the edge of it, just where the volcanic soils end onto the Pliocenic clays below. We have 125 acres of total surface. Very different topography, though. Again, you can see here all of this. It is all cliffs where the lava come to an end. So our soil is very different from the top part of the farm to the bottom part of the farm, which is good, of course, because diversity is always good, but it's also challenging in a sense, because sometimes you want to deal with just what you know, and the more you have and the more you have to know. But that's good. This is the other side of the landscape that we have. Again, this is looking out of the ridge where the main house is. This is the valley. We have a little river, a stream of water that is permanent, but we don't pump any water out of it because it's so overexploited. We are trying to be sustainable if we can. But again, this is to show how our topography sometimes is very peculiar. We have all these type of cliffs that are very vertical, and you can see the tufa rock, that is a volcanic rock, a volcanic type of formation that is very light and very porous and is retaining a lot of water. But it ends abruptly with these cliffs. And all these cliffs have been worked out in the passing centuries by mankind, to the point that we have this single standing rock, that this is all that remains of a cliff that was there, that was completely hollowed out, either to carve out materials for building or for any other kind of purposes that we can think of. Like, this is again on the farm. Sorry about this. This is a little sort of an open air cave. This is man-made. This was carved by the Etruscans. That is a pre-Roman civilization that was using our grounds, let's say like that, some 28 to 27 to 2600 years ago. Basically, this was carved out in order to let a road go by. The Etruscans were very peculiar and very good at modifying the topography, especially for having roads go by. And this is the track of an ancient road that was part of a system of road that later became one of the first roads to ever be paved by the Romans. Now, it's not that everybody in this world has something like that on his farm, yeah, I know it sounds sexy, but it's not that easy sometimes when you have to deal with it, One of the tombs, these are graves dug by the same people. The 7th and the 6th century BC was kind of the peak of the Etruscan civilization in our region, and they used to dig all these underground cavities to use as graves that they wanted to look like houses, and they were decorated as houses, and this is the main legacy that we have of them, because their actual houses were built in mud and wood, so we have very little left of it. While we have this nice underground cavity, this is all on the farm. This is a columbarium. This used to be a deposit of cinerary urns. So they were burying the people or they were incinerating them. But it's kind of funny. You look at all these peak marks. You can still see today what the people have been working on, and that's the same part. But you can have those peak marks that go for miles all around. And this is a part of the archaeology map of the farm. This is the northern part of the farm. We saw this is the little road track that I show you. We have another one that is bigger one. This is the one that was actually paved. We have here the paving stones that are still on site. And each of these dots is meaning something. Each of these dots is one ruin that has been there, you know, for a few thousands of years. Again, most of the tombs were installed by 7th, 6th century BC, but then in the Middle Age, all of those were used as houses. So it has been a continuous flow history, basically, that I feel on me while farming this piece of land. And this is one of the most, according to me, most interesting features that we have. So up there is one little tomb, but down here, this is the entrance to a water tunnel that was, again, dug by the same people about the same time. Of course, it's hard to exactly tell when, but we can say for sure that it's pre-Roman. We can probably date it to the same time frame, you know. I would say 8th century BC, though it's more a matter of picturing a time frame between the 11th and the 7th century BC. That's when the Etruscan civilization converted a wild set of marshes and woods that was central Italy into one of the most sophisticated agricultural system of all times. Their farming system was, I mean, it's a lot closer to what was, you know, maybe 100 years ago than what we're doing now is to what we were doing 100 years ago. And this is something that has struck me. But a long story short, these are water tunnels that are cut directly into the bedrock. I had luck a few years ago to be participating with a group of experts that were studying the same type of devices in 12 different countries across the Mediterranean and the Middle East. So it was very interesting for me to start from something that I have out on the farm and be able to compare with what people have and what people are doing in other parts of the world. A long story short, these are underground cavities that are man-made, that are creating a cavity, so it's a depression into the bedrock. They're carved directly into the bedrock. Mainly around the world are used for water collection, especially in arid countries. In our geology, they serve a multi-purpose surfaces. Is water collection, but it's also land reclaiming from on top, diversion of water from the streams, and they used the Etruscan. They used it to modify a lot the orography of the terrain. This is a plan section of an ideal canot, which is basically the same type of devices. We're talking about a sub-horizontal tunnel, underground tunnel that is dug directly into the bedrock with walls that are unlined and that let the water seep in or out of the tunnel into the bedrock, and then a number of shafts that are connecting the tunnel to the surface. I think this is the whole thing is quite interesting. This is a passive system, of course, so the water is collected from the underground into the tunnel, and it automatically naturally flows onto the surface. So there is water coming up to the surface available for human activity that wouldn't be there whether it not for the people who had dug this type of devices. Even more interesting is the fact, and I was, in the beginning, you know, I was kind of giving it for granted. When we bought the farm 20 years ago, the guy we bought the farm from, he took me there and said, hey, you know, if you don't periodically go in there and do some maintenance, this thing will clog up and water wouldn't come out of it anymore. And I said, okay, you know, one more task to do. But then if you think of it, it's not banal. That water is coming out of something that was carved almost 3,000 years ago. That is sustainable. And by going into and doing some repair work, I'm the last one who joined the club that is a club who started 2,800 years ago. So that's not banal. And why is the water coming out of it? Because this is sustainable water collecting. It's sustainable because it's passive, so it will never be overexploiting the resource. It's sustainable because there are multiple multiplicity of factors that are coming in action in order to make this water available. There is water condensation, water collection from the bedrock, and all that kind of stuff. Again, a cross-section of a canal, you can see that there is an exchange of water between the underground and the inside of the tunnel that goes both ways. So sometimes the water is draining into, or sometimes the water is draining out of it and replenishing the water table. And this is particularly important in our geology when we have multiplicity of strata that are, superimposed to one another because our volcanic activity went on for a number of about 1 million years. But this is also quite important for contrasting the effect of climate change. In our climate change is concentrating waterfall more and more into peaks and alternating with droughts. And our soil is very porous. Our bedrock is able to retain about 1/3 of our rainfall. So the Etruscan actually use that in order to infiltrate tidal flow into the underground that then will be able to be used again in the past, in a future, at later times. This is the map of the tunnel that we have. It's actually getting the exit of it is aligned with the church. Actually, it's the church to be aligned with the exit of the tunnel since the tunnel was there first. There's a meaning of the church is that, again, these type of devices are water producing. So you walk into the tunnel, all the length of the tunnel, you don't see a spring. You don't see the water coming in, but you see the water coming out, which is pretty magic. That's why it has always been associated with a metaphysical thing. Well, I did a study. There are a number of those around our area. This is the one. This is the farm. This is the Natural Conservancy of Tuscania. Again, very different geology. This is the study that we did around the tunnel in order to understand and actually determine that the water tunnel is not hitting the water table. So that water is sustainable even because it's not part of a common, it's a resource that is shared, that is very limited in regard to the community who is using it, and is related to a very limited portion of land. That's why the water tunnel, the water that is coming out of the water tunnel is unpolluted, while we got plenty of nitrates in this one. Okay, because this is a much vaster resource, but the vaster the resource and the vaster the community who is using it, and the more likely there will be tensions, so this is not the case for a water tunnel. And again, I'm happy to do maintenance. This is a friend of mine actually from New York City who is helping me out sometime. And it's good to know that the club who started with the Etruscan 2,500 years ago can enlist people that are willing to be part of it. And so we are still having water today, and also this is not on the farm, this is Lake Vico, but it's just to remind how the Etruscans were able at managing the territory. This lake has an artificial emissary, which is underground, which is a tunnel, which is giving water to the city of Ronciglione, that was cut basically to lower the level of the lake so that all this northern part of the crater could be put into cultivation. The Etruscan did this in a number of different cases, and it's kind of extraordinary to think of what they did in terms of, again, creating arable land and cultivatable land. And also, this is not the legacy of the Etruscans. Maybe not everybody knows, but it's them who started to select out of a cardoon an artichoke. So this is in my garden, and I'm happy to have in my garden something that is going, that is keeping going, that is still a legacy of that land, not because of the topography of the land, but because of the people who used to live there. At the same time, these are some of my olive trees. These are some of the younger guys, and these are out of my place. And this is also a legacy of the Etruscans, because it's still the Etruscans that by converting, all that into an agricultural system, they started the cultivation of olive tree in central Italy. And this is a very important concept for me, especially speaking with olive tree. You might wonder why, is the olive tree that is quoted 76 times in the Old Testament alone, and it's not a plum. And you might wonder why it's 2 branches of olive tree that are used into the logo of the United Nations, and it's not just, a palm. Well, the reason is that olive tree is, of all cultivated plants, is the one that has the longest lifespan. It can stay there and produce for 1,000 years. And when you're planting something like this the first time, you want to be well settled. You don't want to be a nomadic gatherer anymore. You want to be settled in a society that is giving you the power to defend your work if push comes to shove. Which means that you're planting something that is going to stay there. You want to be identified in society. So family names and private names, concept like property, private property of land, a structured society with somebody to refer to if you're in trouble. Structured society means that, of course, that community is able to farm in a way that is creating a surplus, or it wouldn't be possible to have a structured society. But the structured society is also implying differentiated architecture, and so we end up with a city, but also writing. These are all features of what we call the urban revolution of the Etruscan between the 11th and the 7th century BC. They introduced all of these elements, including the olive tree and including the water tunnel. These are all part of a big picture in which is impossible to determine the relation between cause and effect. But it's amazing to see how they were able to put all this in action and how are we still dealing with the legacy of this. Again, olive tree lives so long. If you look at this twig, this is another peculiarity of the olive tree. The olive tree has buds, even in grown-up parts of the plant, and is the only plant that can survive being chopped off the ground and transplanted even when it's big. But this also has a different meaning, because if you let it go, in its soul, I said it, in its soul, an olive tree is a shrub, because it will just not have one main trunk, but it will have a multiple shootings, which means in turn that the trunk there is a man-made thing, thanks to 200 years of clipping of these clippings. So this also is a good metaphor for a legacy and an alliance between man and nature. And this is another part of why the olive tree is so looked upon. It's kind of a symbol of all the Western civilization, if we want to. The Greeks and the Etruscans, they started to divide people between civilized or barbarians, whether they were cultivating or not, the olive tree and the grapevine. Sorry about this. And yet, these are not the only legacies that we are dealing with while farming in Italy. This is all yellow, but it wasn't so in the past. This is all green, but it's not necessarily going to be green in the future. It's kind of striking. This is 3 charts, three maps on the, it's called aridity index. I don't know if my translation is good enough, but anyway, it's the combination of the amount of water and the state of soils that we have, okay? And this is 1950, and this is 60 to the 90s, and this is 71 to 2000. Now, my farm is exactly here, exactly on that line between the yellow and the green. And that line wasn't there 40 years ago. Shit. Sorry, okay? But anyway, so what can we do about all this? Okay, what can we do about this? This is how we are managing the farm today. Of course, all the different colors have a meaning, but basically houses, olive trees. These are, the blue is where the animals are, or where, those paddocks that are mainly for animals. Our animals are horses and cows, basically, and then we have a few pigs. The green is the vegetable gardens or future orchards. The red is arable. The yellow is those land that can only be pastured, even because they're woods or pasture and all that kind of stuff. So we are trying to, our concept is as an ecological concept, we want to add as many elements into our ecosystem. So instead of doing a monoculture, of course, we're going to, I'm sorry about that, add more elements to it. Of course, you can, this is easy to read for everybody, but this is kind of an outline of all the stuff that is going on in the farm. It's basically, we're working basically on 4 different levels. One is farming proper, one is tourism, one is education, and one is non-profit. And I believe that the sustainability of the whole farm will come from the interaction of these 4 different levels among themselves, hopefully one day. But so what have we done so far dealing with all these legacies? Well, it came easy. I was lucky enough that it came easy for me to start with dealing with the olive trees. I didn't have a clue of what an olive tree was when I started. I didn't have a clue of how to prune it. I didn't have a clue on how to harvest it. And yet these guys were still giving me one of the best products in the world. I was happy. I was lucky enough to start traveling in this part of the world and meeting with some top-notch chefs. And they are the one who I owe the fact that I recognize how the value of this thing. Again, in the beginning, you know, you're in Italy and everybody in Italy has an olive tree. You know, you're a farmer and everybody is farming olive trees. So you think, well, it's an olive tree, you know. And then you start traveling in New York City and you got your product acknowledged. And you find out that simply by harvesting something that is on your farm and pressing, you're doing something that is unique. It's not the best in the world in terms that there might be potentially other products that are just as good but different. It's amazing. You know, I just have to go get it. You know, and I think we've gone. I've gone a bit far. I mean, it took me 15 years to understand how to prune a tree, but I'm finally finding the way to put those back into action. We found out, we put in action a few things, like, of course, all of our groves have grass. We are mulching the clipping right on site instead of burning like everybody else is doing around us. Honestly, I don't understand why they keep burning, because it takes a lot of more energy and a lot more, you know, time, and is all carbon going to feed the greenhouse effect instead of feeding the earth, basically the ground. I'm proud to say that we have orchids in this orchard because we never till, you know, and then again, we harvest, we prune, and we sell. I'm happy to say that I was able to reach, again, a few chefs in New York City. They're buying from me a couple of the biggest, most famous restaurants in this part of the world, which of course is helping me out, if not directly done under the economic point of view, which of course helps. It helped me out because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. You know, it helped me out in building, you know, something around it. This picture is also to remind that this might also, the whole thing might be a risk. Climate is changing, and the climate change is going to affect the production of our trees, particularly in 2 ways. I mean, milder climate through the winter might inhibit blossoms, and especially the olive tree has very peculiar water needs that are basically coordinated so far with how the season goes in terms of rain. We have 2 peaks in the spring, one in the spring, one in the fall, and this long drought in the summer. And that's something that the olive trees like, as long as they have rains in the fall, or they have rains in that particular moment in the spring. If that shifts, then the whole thing might be affected. And this is particularly true with olive oil. That is a peculiar substance. I like to be a producer of olive oil because it's the only substance, it's the only food that comes to the table after being processed that is still alive. There's no heat, no fermentation involved in the making. It's just a squeezing, which means that the enzyme that are into the olive when the olive is on the tree, they don't get killed during the processing, which is a blast. Because it's like, I mean, figure that you're growing tomatoes. You would wish that all of your customers could eat the tomato right out of the vine in the middle of the garden in August. That's what I do with my olive oil. I can do that even in New York, 5,000 miles away, or 6 months later, because it keeps being fresh. Because, again, I don't need to process it, I don't need to pasteurize because there's no bacteria that can grow in it. But the other side is that anything that is into the oil is not there because of me, but it's there because of my plants and my terroir. If my terroir is changing because the climate is shifting, I might not be able to do that anymore. Just another picture, just briefly go through olive oil making. This is the some of the olives getting into the olive mill. The picture is taken at night because, again, it's all a matter of enzymes. So we want to inhibit certain enzymes to start working, and that's why we harvest during the day and we press at night, and all that. I have other things to say, so I'm going through, and then maybe at the Q&A, if anybody has more question about it, I would be happy to come back at it. But again, this is to say that this is how we deal with one of the legacies that we're dealing with on our farm. I'm really happy, I'm grateful to be dealing with something that made me famous in New York City, and I just found it there. I just had to, pick it up, put it in action in a way that would be sustainable for me, and I have a great product that is taking me, all around the world. How else did we deal with these legacies? How else did those legacies inspire what we're doing today on the farm? Well, definitely the water tunnel was a great inspiration. Again, in the beginning, I didn't care about it. It's just a water tunnel. You go in and they silt it. But then you start realizing that, hey, this is not banal. So I started to try to understand, how is it possible that something that was done 3,000 years ago is still giving us water today? And again, there are a few keys to the sustainability of it. And again, one key is the passive functioning, so it's led by gravity. Another key to the functioning of it is that it allows for water exchanges all the way through the length of the tunnel. And the reason why you see water coming out of it and you don't see the water coming into it is because the water that is collected there is basically there because of what we call hidden rains. We call hidden rains because you don't see it, but it's just basically a condensation of micro quantities, micro droplets of water that could get condensed or could gather, a micro droplet per every square inch multiplied per tenths of meters or hundreds of meters of length of a tunnel, end up in something tangible. So basically these two concepts, water driven by gravity and the combination of very small quantities multiplied by very large numbers that are at the base of the functioning of the water tunnel. And based on these two principles, I was able to reconsider all of the water management system on the farm. So now we have a little pump that is operated by the sun, and a number of containers that are, that are put on different places and different heights on the hill flank. The concept is that the PV is operating a pump that is the only pump that can go straight into a PV system because it's a non-rotative, it's a piston pump that is hooked up directly to the PV system and is starting to pump as soon as the sun is out, and it will go on until the sun is not there anymore. So this goes on and on and on, but of course the quantity per minute is small, but the minutes are a lot of them. So we can lift a lot of water every day as long as we have somewhere to store it. But the somewhere to store it, again, this might all sound banal. It wasn't banal to me to put it in action. The concept of storing water is a concept that implies, where do I store it and what do I need it for? So we ended up having 5 different containers right now that get filled. Each is filled every day, and each is filled by the overflow of the previous one. And if you're feeding each tank with the overflow of the previous one, it means that you want to know in advance where you want your water to be and what are your needs. So the first tank is for potable use. The second is for drinking drinking water for the horses and the animals. And then we have 3 that are feeding our gardens that are at different heights. This is one of my collaborators checking on the quality of water. I'm sorry, but I didn't have any other picture of the tank. And then there are 3 tanks that are feeding through our garden. And then we are it's not that we want to be something that is stuck in the past. We're using modern technology. But I like the fact that this technology, this way of using modern technology was inspired by the past because it's somewhat holistic. Again, the one choice of changing the pump has brought me to have to invent where to put the containers and the way the containers are distributed along the hill flank and all that. And so I'm proud to say that now we're running on zero emission in terms of water management for the gardens and all the animals on the farm. Lastly, how did we deal with these, with the legacy again? We wanted to share, so we combined with the local county government who is running the conservancy. We're the only farm who was able to actually build a trail and is open to the public. Anybody can come and see our farm 5 days a week between 10 a.m. and 1 hour before the sunset. This is just open because we feel that a tomb doesn't belong to us, it belongs to mankind. You know, we don't want to be closed, we want to be open. And at the same time, this is bringing people to the farm, which is good because we want the people to be there because, you know, so this is just briefly something that we had to build for the trail. This is a staircase that is partly held by trees. We had this, these are the way since part of it is on the bedrock and part is on the trees, we had to invent this system of letting the trees swing. This was a nightmare to design, but it was so much fun to build. So I'm proud to say that it's there now and it's free of access. Also, this is a shard of pottery that was found on the farm. This is actually a dolium, which is a big vase that the Romans used to store wine or oil. So there's a legacy in there. Another way of dealing with that is we're actually holding archaeological excavation every year. So we're cleaning up with the help of a community of people, including the government. We are cleaning up a piece of, you know, this is kind of amazing. This is one of the beds. You can see the pillow and the bed leg. It's kind of cool. And we're hosting seminar and events on the farm. And so that's all the part that was inspired by the legacies. But of course, you know, where's the food coming from? You know, these are all nice ideas, but these guys need to eat. These guys need to eat, and these guys need to eat as well. You know, so there's more than that to the farm. I told you in terms of agricultural production, we have about 10 acres of olive trees. We have about 30 horses on the farm. We have 8 cows. We have a few pigs for us. We have about a couple of acres of gardens. We're looking into being more and more self-sufficient as much as we can, even because there's no point in wanting to output on the market some of your production if simply the market is not able to pay for it. You know, in order for you to make money enough to make a living. But anyway, this is just a very you will know. I mean, grass can be grazed. Grazing can be considered an intercropping, but grass is also protecting soil from soil erosion, is, you know, holding moist and water. So, of course, the cows and the horses are grazing in 2 completely different systems because one is a polygastric, one is a monogastric. So one likes the tall grass, one likes the short grass, one likes the grasses, and the other one likes legumes, and each of the 2 are able to interrupt the cycle of the intestinal parasite of the other, so they can actually help each other out. This is also to show how big our trees are right now. These are guys that were planted in early 50s. They're still fairly young in terms of olive trees, and still a tree like this can provide a solid 250 to maybe 300 pounds of olives every year, which is not bad. Also, where's the food? Here's some zucchinis. Zucchinis with a view, they grow happy, you know. And this is the layout of the garden and what will be the grove. This is not actually there yet, but the garden is organized in 20 different fields. We actually have a 10-year rotation, which might sound a bit too complicated, but it's okay because we have artichokes and alfalfa in it that are staying, you know, for a total of almost 5 years. So half of our soil we don't really have to look after. What are we doing? Okay, we're going the other way. So we got artichokes for 2.5 years. we chop the artichoke off. What we're doing is actually we take these plants off after they finish producing. Most part of the people, they will leave it until October in order for them to spring back so that they can take clones out of it. What we're doing, we're just taking the whole plant off and transplant it, and then let it come, and then we transplant it in the next field. So we actually are able to use this field in the summer for brassicas or winter squash, whatever is still available there. And also what we're doing, then we got of course, the reason why we have 10-year rotation is because the bulk of our summer crops is nightshades. So we have twice the size for nightshades than for the other families, and that's why we have a 10-year rotation, so that they come basically back every 5. And what we're doing especially for tomatoes, it works really well because these are coming out of the alfalfa they don't need. But for tomatoes, what we're doing, we're planting the hairy vetch ahead of time, and then we just cut it and use it as a mulch. So we are transplanting on sod instead of transplanting on till land. This is kind of important in our climate because this allows us to anticipate the tilling before the rainy season instead of after, which is good because that is saving us a lot of water. Then we're doing lettuce, then we're doing zucchini and cucumber and melons, and then we got the alfalfa. So basically we have a few fields that are in alfalfa, a few fields that are in artichokes. These are perennial. This is of course a leguminose, but we got leguminose in here also. What we're doing, we're planting subterranean clover underneath the artichokes, and this is supposed to act as a perennial. At the same time, I didn't get there yet, but the plan is to build a movable chicken coop and graze the chickens onto the clover and onto the alfalfa, so that will even boost even more my nitrogen. Again, I'm going through quickly, but then after, if you want to, I can come back to it. This is part of our. Another thing is that we have. Where is it? Like here we got clover. This is not clover actually. Is ryegrass or something like that because we're coming. But anyway, we got 1 species, 2 species, 3 species in a year, sometimes even more, in the same field, which is not bad. And this is part of the concept, alternating, permanent crops with crops that are temporary. We're getting into starting our own seedlings. This is something that I'm fairly new at, but we're starting to save our own seeds, of course. Though, I mean, this is a bit hazy. It's the picture, it's not the climate. But, these fennels are looking pretty happy to me in any case. Radicchules that are getting in, cabbages. We got this. This is kind of a funny story. We had way too many cauliflower this year. Not because we planted too many, but because each of them was 15 pounds. We couldn't eat it. I call it a Catholic family, garden. You have to have 12 kids to go through the whole thing. But anyway, so this is some of the garlic. We of course do rows. We alternate the garlic and the carrots, and so there is some part of this. This is the young tomatoes in a mulch, and I think these are the same guys but bigger. So what we're doing, again, here you see the clear soil, but this is sod, this is not tilled, so it can go through the summer quite easily, and it's a continuous struggle. I have 2 employees, and one of them is an older guy, and he said every time there's something complaining, say, hey, this is not the way of doing it. And I said, okay, I don't care, I do it this way in any case. And then he said, hey, there's no grass at all in this garden. Hey, thank you. Yes, wonder why. These are some of the artichokes. Again, we chop the whole thing off. We pot it basically so that we can concentrate the water. Water is a very limiting factor in our climate, so we want to make the most of it. And at the same time, this is clearing the field so we can put the cabbages in earlier. So it makes sense to me to have a bit more work. And these are the artichokes finally going in. You can see the clover was planted about 1 month before, 1 to 2 months before, and just following the season. And these guys are pretty healthy today. I'm happy about it. This is one of the secret weapons that we use for the garden. Some of you might be familiar with it. This is a spader. This is the picture that I took of it the day I bought it. I bought this from a neighbor who didn't know what it was. He used to have it in his yard. He was going to throw it away. I bought it by the pound. And I was very lucky, and I was very happy. This is the way it works. It's kind of very heavy piece of equipment. It dates back to 1971, and it's still working, so that's sustainable also. And above all, I was kind of amazed. This is a picture that I took when I bought it. I mean, with one strike, it goes from this to this, which is, wow. I mean, they all discard it because you have to go so slow, but yeah, I could go slow if that's the result, especially the way it chops everything, which is kind of big chunks. You know, it's really good. And of course, this is the other secret weapon. You know, even here, there's a lot of work, but it pays off. You know, so this is manure, and again, we till it under, and yes, we do till. But also, you might want to consider that with this, you can just back and just plow a little strip. So that might be minimum tilling also. You know, minimum tilling might be also to just concentrate the tilling to where you need and when you need it. We're running out of time. So, outcome. I was asked several times if I think that being an organic farmer will be more difficult than being a conventional farmer. And I say no. I think it's a lot easier. It just depends how you measure your outcome. If your outcome is only making money, then maybe being a conventional farmer will be easier. But if you measure your outcome in a different way, then you might be in trouble if you're a conventional farmer. I measure my outcome by trying to understand how much can I be of help to other people. We are having woofers and interns and people that are coming to help from all over the world, and we made a precise choice in terms of entrepreneurship in organizing our system on the farm. That is a system that requires a lot of hand labor, and we had to come up with the opening ourselves to, you know, to new people that want to come and help. But at the same time, these people that are coming and help, they're coming from all over the world, and they stay with us, and they share. And we can, you know, live together and be happy together and be, you know, having the feeling that we're working jointly on something that is a common goal, no matter where we are from and no matter what our life is to be, you know. Not everybody is working all the time, but we are definitely sharing knowledge. We are sharing food. You know, we are learning from each other, and that's a good outcome. You know, especially because this doesn't clash with the fact that I'm making money. I'm not making that much money, but I can stay in business. And at the same time, there's more than money. Also, I want to, you know, this is a picture of old ladies back in the old days harvesting olives, and I like working the way I do, not just because I don't just want to remember about this, but I want to reproduce it, if possible, in a modern key. We are building a community, and that's part of the part of I like. This is the picture of a calendar that we're putting on sale here in the United States as a fundraiser to sponsor scholarships for students to come and work on the farm. We are willing to build up a community of an ongoing community of students on the farm with people from different backgrounds. We're shooting right now for 3 people at a time, 1 out of farming school, 1 out of culinary school, 1 out of herboristic and naturopath. Because I believe that knowledge is holistic. I believe that it will be a great experience for somebody just out of school to stay 6 months or 1 year in a different country working on something that is specific, and yet being exposed to somebody that has a similar background that is, you know, limitative to what he or she is doing. I would love to do something like that. But also, I'm practical, you know, and being practical, I acknowledge that there's always so much that I don't know about the farm, you know, and that I should know. So I think that the most valuable tool for my farm will be something that will always be spending nights on books in order to know more about it. Because, you know, yeah, I know some about it, but there's still a lot more. So this is, again, one page of the calendar. The concept is that we have chefs for each page. Each page is one picture that is telling you something about the olive oil production, but also is one chef telling you what to do with it. And this is why I call this a community building, because these are all chefs in the United States that are buying from us, that are willing to support us in something that is actually supporting American students to come over to the farm. It's a cycle. You know, that's the part I like. And that's the part I like because basically we're all united. We're all one thing. You know, we're all fractals into a larger picture. Most of us are not able to see the larger picture and are only focusing on what they're doing. But I'm sorry, that's not the way to go. You know, we're all connected, you know, and we want to remind us that man was able to participate in the, you know, both in the miracle of turning the yellow into green, which we are still able to do. We're a lot better in turning the green into yellow, and that's something that we want to be very careful of. But no matter what, this is all connected. Okay, so this is not an outcome. This is a little plant like this that I took out of my garden. The roots are coming all the way like this, which I take it as a good sign that my soil is doing well. I mean, organic matter is 2.69 now. It's okay. Yay, it was 140 5 years before. So that's good. Okay, I like that. I like this. I like this guy to be there. This is farm crew taking a breath. But at the same time, this is more than farm crew, because it's these guys that are going to hold on for this line. Everything goes through the, you know, organic matter and the fertility of soil that is able to retain water, basically, you know. And at the same time, we want to remember what good us at mankind we were able to do in the past, and the bad. This is a picture I took in the Aral Sea in Uzbekistan, in Central Asia. This is the biggest man-made disaster in terms of water management. It was just unbelievable to be there. And again, we want to remember all that has been going through in the passing years. And every time I look at those trees, and that's why I call it a challenge to be a farmer in Italy, because every time I look at those trees, I can't but picture the 3,000 years of history that made it possible for those trees to be there today. And I start wondering, what are we doing today for somebody that will be here in 3,000 years from now? Now, you don't want to answer that question, because honestly, we're just fucking the whole thing up. So basically, every time I look at this landscape, I'm just wondering, am I doing the right thing? Every time I'm desilting the water tunnel, are we doing the right thing? Yes, I am. I'm pretty sure that I'm doing the right thing in calling over people from the world, all over the world, and share what I'm doing and share what I have in order to find out what the best possible outcome will be, how to measure it. Monuments we can't eat, the olive trees we can eat. And also is a way of remembering the way mankind has been able to be respectful to this planet. And this is Valle dell'Oro, this is in town, the Golden Valley. Everybody's looking for gold. The gold is tomatoes. The gold is producing something that is able to feed us. And again, I can't but take the water tunnel as a metaphor for, I'm going reverse, for, you know, what good man has done, and hopefully we'll be able to reproduce this in the future. Thank you. Okay.
So we have time for some questions. That is a fire alarm, but it's not in this building.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
Comfortable and
okay.
questions for
Okay. Yeah.
I take it you do not have to irrigate your olive trees yet.
Yes, we don't. We don't irrigate, and we might do so if climate change. But even so, we wouldn't do it in the summer, because in the summer the olive tree needs to have at least a solid month to 2 months of drought in order to create the antioxidants.
So irrigation will affect the quality of the olive oil?
If it's done in the wrong period of time, it would. Yes, there are stories of farmers that spend huge amount of money in order to create irrigation line for the olive trees, and that water is just water. So when you squeeze the oil, the water goes down the drain, and actually it does bad because the antioxidants are water soluble more than they are liposoluble. So all of the antioxidants will go with the water. So you want to be careful in irrigate the olive trees. They need water in the spring. They will need water in the fall, but they will not need water in the summer. So you can use it once you plant your trees because you want to boost the growth in the first years. But once you get into production, you want to be careful with that. Yeah. No, for the most part, our orchard, a long story short, the bulk of our trees were planted in early 50s, and they were planted in combination with vines, with grapevines. So our trees are very much spaced apart. So there's a lot, because the grapevine was ripped off the ground back in the 70s for subsidies that paid farmers not to be farmers anymore or something like that. And so we have a lot of space. So all of our gardens are embedded into the part of the olive groves, and some of our fields are as well. But this is a very common concept. I mean, there's a text in the 1600s in Italy that already talks about intercropping, trees with other type of cropping. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, except for the fact that, for example, this doesn't let us do mechanical harvesting of the trees because we can't access the tractor, into the gardens, So we have to go with handmade harvest, which of course requires a lot of work. There are a few tools and that can help with that, but still is a lot of work, and you need a lot of labor to do so. And that's basically one of the main problems with the bulk of the groves today, especially in Italy, that they were planted and laid out maybe even only 50 years ago, like in this case, which is nothing, but they were laid out and designed in a moment in which nobody would think about harvesting mechanically. So we're not sustainable on the market because our cost of production in Italy is 7 euros a liter. A liter is a quarter of a gallon. If you go in Spain, which is still Europe, that drops to 3. If you go to Tunisia, that drops to I don't know what, because of cost of labor. And that's why a lot of people are ending up ripping off their groves. And this is kind of a disaster, because they're ripping all of those groves that are more prone to be ripped off are the ones that are actually strongholds against climate change. Olive tree is a very peculiar tree. In fact, it can grow in a pile of rocks, and it can grow and bear fruit with less than 400 millimeters of rain per year. So it has been used by mankind as a conquering plant in order to, switch from that yellow into green. That was a key factor of the olive tree. And now we've got into the other end, in which people are ripping those plants off only because they cannot make a living. Sounds like bullshit to me. I mean, we call this progress, but honestly, I don't know, So I don't know if there are any more questions or if lunch is calling. No, yeah.
What was your cultivar? And your olive trees season was very old. Are you planting also?
No, I didn't plant any more trees. Again, the bulk of my trees are of a variety that is called Canino, which is a local variety that takes the name from the next town over. So it's kind of a heirloom, local variety that was used forever, and it's very hardy, and it fits very well that environment. And those were the ones that were planted in the early 50s. Then when in the 70s they took the vines off, there are two parts of the farm in which the ground is so shallow that you wouldn't be able to do anything else, and so they planted more planting there. In between, and those are two different varieties, Frantoio and Lecchino, which are very productive and very common, but both of them are very early in the season. So being early in our climate means that they're very prone to the attack of a parasite that is the olive fly. So it's kind of likely that we wouldn't be able to harvest much on those trees today. But no, I don't plan to. I don't plan to add more trees right now. I don't know if I will ever do in the future, because there are so many different orchards around us that are kind of neglected because people don't know how to make a living with it anymore. Because a long story short is, olive trees has always been planted in small batches in order only to support the family. So there are a number of places around me that have maybe 10 trees, 20 trees, 30, that are never big enough in order to make a living today. They used to represent, wealth back in the old days, but nowadays it's just lost. So I don't know if you, in the picture where all these, the farm with all the different colors, the colors were kind of getting out of the farm limits, because we are starting to team in with neighbors, because we are lucky to be, able to sell our crop, and so I better team in more farmers or team in more trees instead of planting more on my own grounds. I don't think it will make sense to start new grows when we have old ones that are dying. Yeah.
Have you had success, or your success, has that inspired farmers around you to start using their olive trees, or are they still just letting them?
No, not yet. My success is not that big yet. Okay, and no, there are a lot of people that are looking at what I'm doing with great interest, for sure, and because I'm able to sell my product ahead of time. Almost every year we sell out. We sell out with a price that is almost twice as much as the common market price for the same or equivalent product. Of course, I'm trying to do my best in order for my product to stand up, of course, but it's not said that other people couldn't do the same. And we're doing this by cutting the cost of production in terms of money, because we're using volunteer workers. So it's not that we are not paying them, of course, we're paying in a different currency. That's part of how we stay in business, is because we are working in these two different currencies. One is cash, and one is giving away what we have, which is meat, which is good food, which is landscape, which is being in Italy, which is our knowledge, which is, sharing what we have and what we know, which is something that we're very rich of. Now, has this come to the point where other farmers around me are willing to team in with me just for that? Not yet. Part of it is also a generational problem. I'm 40. I just turned 40 a few days ago. And I'm been on that farm, managing that farm 15 years. I'm a newbie. In a country, that is kind of conservative farmers that have been there for 700 generation, and this is the way to do it because my father used to do it and my grandfather used to do it, and what do you know? I don't know. Okay, you keep going and I keep going my way, and then you can, again, how do you measure your outcome? I'm not unhappy of what I'm doing, but I can't just be forcing other people to do it, because it's a matter of philosophy, basically. Hopefully one day, maybe my business, my success will be so big that my economic success will overpower the differences in philosophy. But, that's not my main occupation right now. My main occupation is trying to stay in business and run a farm, not just be a sociologist for now, but maybe for the future, I don't know. Yeah?
I had a question about your water tunnels.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the infrastructure projects back in the reign of Augustus was the aqueduct. And you had a photo of one of the aqueducts.
No, say that again.
You had a photo of one of the aqueducts, right?
Yeah.
Above ground aqueduct.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is there any evidence, at least on your farm, whether these water tunnels might have been feeding some of the aqueducts?
Oh, there is plenty of evidence, not on my farm, but there is plenty of evidence that the water tunnels that I'm talking about of Etruscan origin are at the base of the Roman aqueducts. Okay, it's exactly the same concept, it's the same technology. All of what we know about the Roman, that we know of as Roman hydraulic technology is actually, has been invented by the Etruscans. And it was pockets of intelligentsia of the Etruscan people into the Roman society that were still managing those. The only invention, important invention in terms of hydraulic technology into the Roman time is the reverse siphon that came much later. So the principle is exactly the same. Is also this underground. It's also this horizontal structure, linear structure, that got bigger and bigger. And the only thing that the Romans actually did is couple those with the ark, with the building of the arch. And the other difference is basically a difference in the society. So all the tunnels into the Etruscan society were feeding small communities because it was a society that was very spread out. While the Roman power, of course, was a central power that was able and had the need to lay out and had built these huge works that, of course, went on as long as the central power was able to defend and then maintain it, and then of course they collapsed after that. But there's absolutely a continuity between in the two technologies. The main difference in terms of water is that the water tunnels are the walls are unlined, so the water can seep, through the walls, and so there is water exchanges between the inside of the tunnel and the underground, versus an aqueduct that is only made to transport water, so we'll have the walls lined with waterproof plaster that will retain water, but it's exactly the same thing.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.